Ohio State has had another member to its 2026 recruiting class, and James Laurinaitis didn't have to leave his backyard to do so. Cincere Johnson, number 71 player and the number 8 edge rusher in the country, though he's expected to play linebacker at Ohio State. Andrew, he's fresh off of his official visit this past weekend, and Ohio State beats out Penn State and Alabama to land him. And this just seemed like the past weekend was the punctuation where for something that maybe people were already expecting, in that Ohio State and that Glenville pipeline gets a little bit stronger at the right day.
Yeah, this was something that I know Ohio State's coaches had felt pretty good about. I had heard going into the official visit. So this was before you take all those fancy photos and before you get to meet all the other people in the class and before you get to do all those other things. And they had felt pretty good about this one. And I think you're right. I think that OV was probably the exclamation point. And when you talk about what Cincere Johnson's recruitment was like, I don't just want to give James Laurinaitis the credit of, well, you got a Cleveland kid. Congratulations. Well, you got a Glenville kid. Whoop-de-doo. Yeah, great football player, but you didn't really do a lot. I went up and talked to Cincere during his junior football season, and I asked him about a couple of different schools that he was visiting, and he went, yeah, I'm looking all over the place, Alabama, and he listed a couple other schools. Alabama was on that list, and he said, oh, I really like Penn State. The Penn State linebacking history, which they have had a great linebacking history at Penn State historically. He mentioned that, and he loves watching those old linebackers, and he loves playing like that. And this was a battle that Ohio State, I feel like, actually had to battle. This was not just, we show up a few times and take the kid out of Glenville. Ohio State really, really did a good job here. And I think Cincere Johnson's going to be a great member of the class. And I'm sure we're going to talk in about 2 minutes about what kind of player he's going to be. But this was a recruitment that Ohio State, I think, really, really wanted to get, because now you have a linebacking core with CJ Santa and Cincere Johnson, and you feel really good about that. I talked with CJ at 7-on-7 camp, actually, as you guys are watching this video, earlier in the week of Cincere's commitment. And CJ kind of laughed and he said, yeah, these last couple of weeks, James had been asking me to kind of put some pressure on Cincere, and James had been asking me to really start reaching out to Cincere. And, he's a great football player, and I think Ohio State's getting a good one.
So you've got the number 71 player and the number 296 player, as you mentioned, CJ Santa, out of Olentangy High School in Lewis Center, Ohio, which is on the outskirts of Columbus, Ohio. So yeah. James Laurinaitis sticking in his backyard in the 2026 class. And you pair that with borderline 5-star recruit Riley Pettijohn out of Texas, top 150 recruit TJ Alford out of Florida, and Eli Lee as a 3-star recruit out of Archbishop Hoban up in Akron, Ohio. Like, that's your future.
Yeah.
Now, those 3 from 2025 and those 2 in 2026. I'm assuming that James Laurinaitis is done in his 2026 cycle and he's moving on to 2027, unless maybe something happens with a 5-star linebacker done in Georgia, though it seems like Alabama's going to win that race. So if we're assuming this is the 5 for the future of Ohio State football play, when we're looking out there in 2027 and 2028 and 2029, we're seeing some mixture of these 5s. Evaluate that room. What's the confidence scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, you have in James Laurinaitis leading essentially what is the future of Ohio State's linebacker?
Like a 9. And the only reason it's not a 10 is because I don't want to have people come back and yell at me in 2 years if they need to go take a linebacker out of the portal. We are really, really high on this list. And I really like Eli Lee as a football player. There were people in the building when Eli would camp, or when Stephen, you could probably talk about this, when people would talk about him and they would go, oh, you mean Tommy Eichenberg? And it wasn't just the number. Like, they really saw a lot of comparisons there. And I mean, that's a linebacker that I think Ohio State fans saw a lot of really, really good football out of, made a lot of tackles, really, really smart, put people in right positions, things like that. So, that to me is a great guy to have in your room, because then you are also supplementing that with Alford and Pettijohn, like you mentioned. Riley Pettijohn, I think, has a chance to get on the field probably faster than any of the other freshmen. I think when we talk about Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese, and it's important to remember, Sonny Styles is not going to be here after the 2025 season. Arvell Reese might be. So, the future of this linebacker room, we might be talking about the tail end of Arvell Reese's career here.
Mhm.
So Arvell Reese is in that mix as well. But I know Peyton Pierce is there. I know Garrett Stover is there. But man, Riley Pettijohn is a dude who can fly. And when you hear the phrase sideline to sideline speed a lot when people talk about linebackers, that's the kid. Go watch his film and you'll say, there it is. TJ Alford, same thing, tackling machine. I think both those guys are really, really good football players. Then you go to this class. CJ Santa, I think, is kind of in that mold of a Peyton Pierce, of a Cody Simon, where you were talking about maybe a true, maybe middle linebacker when he gets to Ohio State. And he is young. He told me that he just started playing linebacker a year ago. Then you have Cincere Johnson. And Cincere Johnson's one of my favorite players that I have watched since I've been covering recruiting for Ohio State. And I started doing this ahead of the 2024 class. So, I started on this beat in 2023. And of these couple of classes, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, Cincere Johnson is right at the top. I think he is a great, great football player. He's aggressive. He's fast. He's listed at 247 as coming off the edge. I don't think Ohio State's going to use him that way if they stick to what they have defensively now. I think there's a conversation maybe if they go to a 3 down front, you can have him come off the edge. But this kid is really, really smart. You hear it from coaches at Glenville, like they will say, hey, everybody talks about Cincere's athletic ability and his physicality and his aggressiveness, but this kid knows football. Like he has a really high football IQ, and that to me is what I love about him. So this linebacking core is great. You can't realistically poke a ton of holes in it because you could say, oh, well, why didn't you get this 5-star? Why didn't you get that 5-star? Okay, well, I mean, I'm sorry. Riley Pettijohn was a 5-star, and TJ Alford was, I think, a top 100 recruit, and Cincere Johnson's a top 100 recruit, and CJ's a top 300 recruit, and Eli Lee was a top 400 recruit. Like, do you want 5-stars? It's just not going to happen. And this group is really, really good, and this does not count the example I think that a lot of people have made of maybe Simeon Caldwell one day plays linebacker. He's in the 2026 class. He is currently a safety. Maybe he bumps down. All of these linebackers are fast, they're physical, they're aggressive, and James Laurinaitis has himself a war machine building in that linebacker room for future years to come. This is a really, really exciting time for Ohio State's linebackers.
Is Sincere Mike, Sam, or Will? And I know Will and the way Ohio State's linebacking core has worked for the first 6 years of the Ryan Day era, Will and Mike are a little more interchangeable. Mike just is the guy who's making the calls, and now obviously last year the Mike's the guy who's got the literal microphone in his head, the speakers in his head. But where does he fit? Like, is he Sonny Styles? Is he Arvell Reese? Not just because they're from Glenville, right? But where does he fit? And who should we be watching on Ohio State's defense in 2025 as this is where they're going to put Cincere Johnson when he gets here in January?
Arvell Reese.
Okay.
And again, it is easy to make that comparison. They went to Glenville. I believe they wore the same number at Glenville.
They were.
I believe that Sincere did that because he wants to model his game after Arvell Reese, because Arvell, was kind of a role model and someone that he looked up to. So to me, I see Arvell Reese when I see Cincere Johnson, and I see a guy who you are going to look at him in a year and go, oh, look, he walked in the room. Like, this is a massive, massive human being. He's like 6'3", 240. He can move. This is Arvell Reese. And I think the comparison is maybe a little bit too easy, and you don't, oh, well, maybe if you could find somebody better. No, it's a layup. It's right there, and you have to take it. You have to take the bunny. It's Arvell Reese because I think their profiles are similar, and they're going to be similar when they get to Ohio State. I think what they're going to look like when they play at Ohio State is going to be similar, and I think their play styles are going to be pretty similar. So for us on Buckeye Talk, we've been talking about this on the podcast. We've been texting about this to our subtexter 614-350-3315. Everybody knows that, especially Stefan, really likes what Arvell Reese is going to be able to do on the field. I kind of feel that way about Cincere Johnson, and the funny part is we might just be talking about the same thing just a couple of years apart.
Cincere Johnson, the number 71 player, number 8 edge rusher, expected to play linebacker at Ohio State. Picks them over Penn State and Alabama. Get the text 614-350-3315. That's the first place we go with all this information. And go listen to Buckeye Talk wherever you find podcasts. This is a shorter version of that on YouTube. 614-350-3315. Ohio State's 2026 recruiting class, ranked top 3 in the country, gets a little bit bigger, as does that Glenville pipeline. You've got Arvell Reese, you've got Bryce West, and now you've got Cincere Johnson in 2026. And maybe he won't be the only Glenville guy in this class, but I guess we'll see. That's Andrew. I'm Stephen, and he's Cincere. Well, he's not on the video, but he's in the class. I don't know. See ya.